Chapter 19. It was the middle of the night by the time we reached the psychiatric ward. Gone was the assessment and administrative rigmarole of my first admission. This time I was hastened in and led straight to the semi-secure unit that was to be my prison for the next while. The on-call admitting doctor was a slightly wild-eyed, partially shaven surfie that I recognised from my previous admission. He decided it would be a good idea to give me a quick physical check-up and establish some baseline observations, so he got me to lie on the bed. As soon as he put his hands on me, I flipped and started kicking and thrashing about and swearing at him until he raised his hands in surrender and backed off out the door. Click. Locked. I was high. I was in the grip of a full-on psychotic high, and it didn't take the doctor long to formulate his revised diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder, also known as manic depression, is, briefly put, characterised by the sufferer's huge polarisations of moods, from its notoriously evil depressions to its monstrous and grandiose highs. These swings may occur in quick succession, which is known as rapid cycling, or a person may stay in any stage for a prolonged period of time. And although the illness is characterised by the two opposing poles, there is every other point in between on the continuum. Bipolar disorder can be hereditary or drug-induced. Mine appeared to be the latter, an illness if not triggered by, then definitely not helped by, my ingestion of large quantities of antidepressants, cannabis smoke, alcohol and fungi. I had spent a long time in the depressive part of the cycle and was now soaring the opposite heights of extreme elevation. A fact about bipolar disorder: left untreated, it can be a fatal disease, with those in its grip losing their lives to suicide in the depressive stages or to accidents such as being hit by traffic or jumping out of windows in search of flight in the manic phases. I got lucky. Thank God for the hospital's judicious use of sleeping tablets. That first night I was medicated to the hilt and finally got to lay my shattered body down to rest. But sleep didn't last long, even with the pills. I woke up early the next morning, mind fizzing, body pumping, fully wired and ready to go. But the door was locked. There was a little buzzer by the bed that I could press if I needed assistance. I pressed it so many times I broke it and stared with paranoid suspicion at the tangle of wires that dangled out of the socket. I praised myself for having dismantled the secretly hidden camera that must surely have lain behind the facade of the innocent-looking plastic button. I could not keep still. I got up and down. First I buzzed and later screeched to be let out for cigarettes. I thumped endlessly on the door. I hurtled around that cell like the Energizer bunny. I had started karate lessons earlier that year when I'd still been well, and so now, stuck in the treacherously frustrating state of confinement, I set up my room like a dojo and practiced my roundhouse kicks against the walls. At least it helped channel some of the energy. I imagine it looked odd, though, to the nurses who would come and peer at me through the shatterproof window in the door. Mania manifests differently in different people. Although some of its characteristics are visibly similar, it appears to accentuate aspects of an individual's pre-existing personality. In my case, mania generates a powerful, intense, rapid-fire creative force. I'm flooded with concepts and ideas for songs, poems, stories and paintings, but it turns out that I'm often the only one who can understand what I create from this state. Apparently it's all rather obscure. I was permitted my guitar for company in semi-secure, and I attacked with punch and vigour some songs I'd been working on for music school, including one of Prince's. It hadn't sunk in yet that I wouldn't be going back there. As a creative force, mania is a mercurial energy. Yes, I get a lot of ideas and inspiration, but I'm far too restless to bring them to fruition with any persistence or rigour, devoting myself to an idea only until the next distraction presents itself, which is usually not long. Most things don't get finished, but a high can be a creatively stimulating and productive time. It just doesn't know when to stop. Another expression of my mania is that I become fixated with tidiness and order. a subconscious response to the total disorder of the mind, perhaps. So I neat-freaked my cell. I folded and refolded my towels, made and remade the bed, swept up any little spot of dust or debris, and set out orderly piles of my clothes. I'd been given some magazines to read, and I carefully and obsessively tore out anything at all that was of passing interest or momentous significance. I laid all the pictures, articles and words I collected neatly around the room. I crackled in word with frenetic activity, and the high showed no signs of abating. I was crushingly bored in that room, though. The bipolar mind requires an enormous amount of stimulation to keep it amused. I really had to get out of here. After the first couple of escape attempts, the nursing staff took all my clothes away and kitted me out in a pair of striped hospital pyjamas like the ones I'd seen on Andrew the last time I was in. They were supposed to be a deterrent for going on the run and did at least make an escapee easier to spot in a crowd. I liked them, though. The trousers were the same ones Kurt Cobain, lead singer of Nirvana, wore before he killed himself. Hospital grunge, the must-have fashion accessory of the 90s. The idea with Semi-Secure is that you could be locked in your room, but you were near the lounge and close to the hub of activity on the ward. Some visiting by family would have been allowed, except right now I hated them all for their entrapment of me, and I think they'd been advised to stay away. Nurses were allowed to let me out at their discretion for cigarettes and toilet breaks, but I was an opportunistic Houdini. Early one morning I evaded the watchful eyes of staff while I was let out for a cigarette. It was the middle of winter and I took off, running away from the ward in my pyjamas, bare feet sticking to the heavily frosted grass. I was oblivious to the pain of the cold, oblivious to any sensation except for the relentless pressure to be in perpetual motion. I got all the way down to the main road and started hitchhiking, in my pyjamas, and wouldn't you know it, someone actually gave me a lift, no questions asked. I got dropped off in town and immediately headed to my stoner friend's flat and smoked a joint. I got wasted, bludged some money, and went in search of a coffee from my favourite cafe. Was I still in my pyjamas? I was in the trousers still, but I might have changed the top while I was out. I know I was in the trousers because a woman who was later to become a good friend of mine sat down and introduced herself to me. A total stranger, she told me later that she was completely unfazed by my appearance. She thought I looked interesting, an anorexic 6 stone in weight, #1 haircut which by now had a pattern shaved into the side, and wearing what were very obviously hospital-issue striped pyjamas. She didn't care that I was an escaped mental patient. Maybe she liked the pants. I sat with her and chatted about what, I have no idea, and sooner or later Mum arrived, having a fair idea where to find me after the staff had alerted me to my disappearance, and it was back to the mental hospital for me. The staff were running out of patience with my disappearances. They were annoyed with my constant banging on the door and generally being an out-of-control pain in the butt. Ask anyone who has been in close proximity to someone in full manic flight. They will tell you it doesn't take long for that person to totally exhaust any remaining energy or goodwill towards them. So the staff played their trump card. They pumped me so full of drugs that I later was told I'd slept solidly for 3 days. And when I awoke, I found I was no longer in semi-secure. I had been moved. I was in totally secure. Ouch.